The next topic that we are going to discuss about is what finalization. Finalization. So what do you mean by finalization? Finalization is nothing but we can just simply say that just before restoring object, garbage collector will 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 get access to the finalize method in order to perform the garbage collection or cleanup processes. Finalization is a process. It's a process of following the finalize method. When you want to follow the finalize method, you have to follow a process, right? So how do you call the finalize method? You will use system.gc or runtime.getRuntime.gc. This process is called as finalization. That's it. This is a process of calling the finalize method to perform the resource cleanup operation. So what do you mean by resource cleanup operation? Resource cleanup operation is nothing but when there are any memory leaks or when there are any dereferenced variables or when there are any variables that are nullified to null value, those variables needs to be cleaned up, right? So that operation is called as resource cleanup operation. In order to perform resource cleanup operation, we have to call the finalize method, right? Second point is the related object finalize method will be called. The related object finalize method will be called when we perform resource cleanup operation. What do you mean by this? So let me take a small example so that you will get some understanding. So let me take the notepad when STS all this. This time the name of the class is going to be class test. Okay. So let me create an object. Let me create a constructor to make sure that whether the object is getting created or not. And simply take it as test, or you can also use public access model. Object creation, right? So I am going to take another class. Here I am going to take a class in the name of check. So this check class is going to have a constructor by the name of, because constructor name should be same as the class name. It should be caps. Here I am going to use a system.out.println statement. Check object creation. So this is test object creation. So test class object creation and the test class check class object creation. So let me create object for these two classes. First I am going to create object for check class. Check obj equal to new check. So with this instruction, what happens? The constructor of the check class will be executed. So this is the constructor of the check class. So my answer, my display, my output should be check object creation. Let me try it out once. So check object creation. So I need to perform destruction, what we call it as resource cleanup operation for this check class. I need to destroy this object. In order to destroy that object, I need to make sure that this object reference variable is getting nullified. So null. So I am calling system.gc. Right. So here I am overriding a finalize method. So this finalize method belongs to check class. Please try to understand this. The finalize method is a method. This finalize method is belonging to check class. So this method has nothing to do with the test class. This is a finalize method that belongs to check class. Okay. Here I am using a statement. Check object structure. Okay. What it says, when you are calling the finalize, when you are performing resource cleanup operations, the relevant object finalize method will be called. Relevant object in the sense the check class object, because we have created object for the check class and we are destroying the object for the check class. So check class finalize method will be called. So I can have the finalize method here also. Here I can say test class finalize method. I mean test object destruction. Okay. This finalize method belongs to test class. Okay. But here what I am doing, I am nullifying the object reference of check class. If I run this, there are two finalize method, but which finalize method will be called? The relevant finalize method will be called. Right? Even though I have finalize method here, right? Even though and I have finalize method. So we will trace this program, we will understand it better. Why this finalize method is getting ignored? Why this is getting called? Usually what happens when system.gc is called, it will check the finalize method in the current class. But in the current class, there is a finalize method. It is relevant that the output should be this, right? We have performed so many programs in the inheritance concept. When you go back to inheritance concept, first of all, whenever you are trying to call a superclass method, it will try to check if the method existing in the current class or not. Already the finalized method is there in the current class, but the control is still going to the exact class where the finalized method is available. For example, let me say, let me take another method. Public public void checking. I am taking the checking method. So in order to call this method, right, I can directly, with the help of this object references, I can call obj.checking. So here, now we are able to conclude, we are able to understand that we have a control, we have a direct control to get access to this method. But in this case, system.gc, we are not controlling it. The JVM knows that whenever the particular object is nullified, JVM is able to catch which object is getting nullified. The finalized method is available in the which class. Here we are defining the path. Here we are defining the control. Right? If I run this, we are telling JVM go and check the checking method. Go and check if the checking method is exist in the check class. Directly we are writing the checking method. Directly we are using the object reference and we are calling checking method. But in this case we are not calling. We have just used obj equal to null. But JVM is able to find which finalized method needs to be called. That's what I'm trying to say. If you go back to the theory, the related object finalized method will be called when you perform resource cleanup operation. This is what it means. This is what the related object finalized method. Even though I have finalized method in the current class, it will not get any confusion. It knows which finalized method needs to be called. This is called as what? This is called as process of finalization. The process of calling the finalized method to perform the resource cleanup operation. One more thing is another case study we have to discuss. This is the last case study. Let me remove all this. I have a simple test class. Okay. I'm creating an object for the test class. Test t equal to new test. Test t equal to new test. Right. So I am overriding the finalize method. Let me override the finalize method. So this is the finalize method that I have overridden. So here I am making a statement to make sure whether this finalize method is being called or not. I am doing a little hard coding. What I am doing, I am just I am directly going to call the finalize method t dot. So t, what it says. I am directly calling the finalize method. Right? So in order to call this method, we have an option. Usually, how do we call this finalize method? We will nullify this object. This is what we have learned till now. We will nullify this object and we will make use of system.gc. The system.gc will going to call the finalize method. This is how we have been working on the garbage collection for the last 3 classes. This is how the finalize method is getting called. But what I am trying to do here is I am using this object to call this method t dot finalize. I am directly calling the finalize method. I can call like this as well. There will be no issues. So this is the direct call to the finalize method without using GC. For the first 3 times, no, the direct call is getting executed for the first 3 times, and the fourth call is the call that is taken care by system.gc. First 3 calls are my direct calls, and this is an indirect call. We are placing the request to the JVM. This call is a JVM call. These 3 calls are the developers calls. So the question will be, this is how the question will be. How many times the finalize method will get executed? So your answer should be 3 times. For sure, it will get executed for 3 times. 3 times for sure, and 1 time not sure. Because the 1 time is the call that is given to the JVM. All the 3 calls will be called for sure because it is not a JVM call, it's a direct call. This call is a doubtful call because this call is being done by the JVM. It may accept the request, it may not accept the request. So every time it is accepting the request, sometimes you will see only 3 object restriction. Not able to encounter the situation here. Every time it is a 4 finalized methods are getting called, but sometimes only 3 finalized method will be called for sure. This will be called for sure because it's a direct call. This call is doubtful. It may call, it may not call. Because every time when we call the finalized method, when we place a request for the garbage collection or to the JVM may accept the request or it may not accept the request. So this is one of the most, not most, you may expect this kind of interview question. So this piece of Java code will be given, and this is how the code, you can expect this kind of code. They will ask you how many times the finalized method gets executed. So from your analysis, you can simply say the finalized method gets executed directly for 3 times, and the JVM call. So this is the call where the request is being placed to the JVM. This call may be accepted or may not be accepted. So 3 times for sure, 1 time not sure. It may accept it or may not get accepted. This is all about finalization. So we have completed Island of